And we can't really steer anything because there's no one here. There is a paradox, however, which is that we can't really steer anything, but we notice that a lot of stuff that is thought about happens, right? That and a lot of things we think to do, the body does. And we're assuming that there is a connection. We can't say that there's, I mean, we can say there's not, but there's the paradox, which is that you are the one thing, which is this, and you are the none thing, which is what's prior to this. So this unit does what it's programmed to do, but it accepts that or it rejects that based on the conditioning it has accepted up to now. DNA arrives on the planet and it's full of patterns, but those patterns get changed and bent and everything else by experience. They're fluid. We we just don't want to say, like even at the end of this, please don't say, well, I've got it, because there's no one there to say I've got it. But it can feel like it. And that's what I want to address, is that when we say I feel like, that's a true statement, because that's how we feel. And it doesn't make any difference what the radical non-dual truth might be. I don't steer by that a lot. I can't. I'm being steered. But on the other hand, it I can see things that look to me to be terribly unskillful, which is trying to be uh, as lightly gentle as I can be, and I want you have to accept the fact that you have woken up, and you have to live your life as if you haven't. In other words, you can't say, well, I'm awake and nothing exists, so I'm just going to do, the body's going to do whatever it wants. That kind of license is not available. It's our job here to do the very best that we can. We don't know what that means until we start trying. And I know that I could have been a better husband to Betsy for the last 25 years, whatever it is. But I've tried to be the best I could be the whole time. And it's just that my best doesn't equal perfect. And what is doesn't equal what a human being would regard as perfect. It is perfect. There's nothing to compare with it. So it's perfect, but what does perfect even mean there's nothing there's nothing to say, when there's no opposite, when there's no imperfect that actually exists. There's just this. And I think the easiest way that I can deal with this is that I just notice that everything is as it must be. Not like, it's not Fred going on, everything's just as it should be. What does that really mean usually? It means everything is fine with Fred. So what I'm saying is that everything is the way that it should be. I mean, everything is the way that it must be. And that leaves us with the apparent power to conform or resist. And that our real power is in the attitude that we have towards things. It's not in our ability to change this and that. Just if we change the attitude inside, those actions will change. So indirectly, relativity, I don't even know if that's true, but here's what I feel, and here's the way it looks to me, is that I can't say that there's absolutely no influence. I can say that there's no free will, but if we're looking from the awakened view instead of the personal view, it's a completely different world out here. It's just not even close. Because in my world, Brad is in the center, and you guys are all in my room, and I'm the one that's right and good and perfect and could be trusted and should be followed, etc. That's just the way individuals, and maybe not to that extent, but that's generally the way that individuals operate. And when they do, they make a mess of the world, like we have done here. Is that it may not be it may be perfect in the sense that this is what had to happen, this is what had to be, because there's no alternative and there's no comparison. But simultaneously, it can be noticed that everything is perfect, and I want to put this in the right place. So instead of either or, let it be and. You are not just the little man, you are the vastness. But you are not just the vastness, you are also the little person. So if you live that way, you can't go wrong. And I think you can't actually go wrong within the eyes of God, and your experience will be a positive thing for the world. There will be less of what we hate to see going on right now if we can get more people accepting the fact that the world is not against them. The world is, but the world is not against them. And there's nothing personal. So
Awesome, Fred. Thank you very much.
thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Just in the past week, I've been thinking about how I look at the world, how my mind works. I remember a few years ago, I visited, do you remember Guru Maharaji, who came over to this country when he was 12 years old, at age 13 or something in 1972?
Yeah.
And so he was in Boston a few winters ago, and he was leaving the stage after he spoke for about an hour. And before he went behind the curtain, he turned around and he looked at the audience and he pointed and he said, "What are you doing with your life?" And then he turned and was going behind the curtain, and he came back out and he looked at the audience and said, "What are you doing with your life?" And I was struck by that because I've known the guy since the early 70s, and it was a big devotion. His followers were like devoted, and it was more like a yoga of devotion than let's say finding union with God, so to speak. And here he was putting the onus on us, not on him. So I think I was listening to a YouTube video of yours, Fred, or somebody the other day, and something popped up. I can't remember the lady's name, Mary something or other. She wrote a book in 1925, and it's about positive thinking and how we talk about ourselves. And it sounded really good, this narration of the book. And so I started thinking, I went, wow, I have this idea that if you're totally awake, then the mind is buried down somewhere. And if I stay within myself, something Nisargadatta guru told him, if I stay within myself, then then the world, the mind will not bother us so much if I can stay present. But if I latch on to a thought, the thought will take a life on its own and carry me somewhere. And then I start listening to a story, and the story can take on very dark, can go down dark avenues, or vice versa. It might be beautiful. Yet it's not. It's all thought. However, there's a power, and JP was talking about this, and you, Fred, that there's a power that is within, and we can direct ourselves so much. What am I trying to say? I have the opportunity. I live with my grandson. When I retired, God said, I had all these plans in retirement. God said, here, have a grandson. So we ended up raising children again. So now he's a sophomore in high school, and I have to travel 20 minutes to school in the morning and 20 minutes back. So I have a captive audience, or he has a captive audience, but I hear this negative talk from him. You know, I'm not good looking, I'm fat, the girls don't like me, on and on and on and on. And none of it is true, but we create our reality. But then comes along a non-dual awareness. And so I guess there's a question here. Where's the balance between um, being in the world and not? You know, I was talking to a non-dual spiritual teacher recently, and she said that there's no longer any suffering in her life. There's a permanent awakeness.
Who
Um,
was this that you were talking to?
Jan Fraser,
Hmm.
you know Jan? She's written
I
some.
know of her. Yeah, I know her book.
Yeah, yeah. Um, uh, and So where am I going here? What JP just said, oh, brought that. Oh, so in my life now, I'm going back like many years saying, well, gee, there's a power inside and I can direct that power um, in a positive way. But it doesn't, it's kind of like God's will, not mine. So maybe you could direct some comments to that. I don't know if there's a question there or what, but I'm just seeing a little split between positive thinking and being in a non-dual community.
The there's not necessarily a split um, because I am just using myself as an example because I know me better than anybody else, better than I know anybody else except for maybe Betsy. Um, but I can speak for both of us here, which is that it's a it's not a matter of of looking at the world through rose tinted glasses. That's not it. And what we have to be careful because when we get into this, we'll understand the essential neutrality, and we will try to bend that to our way and to everything being the way I want. And it's not, we don't mean to do it, but once we find out that there is uh, that we are part of the whole thing, we think we maybe can get a hold of it and steer it